I'm here today to talk about something I really hate. I hate waste. Well, my wife calls it simply being cheap, but waste is everywhere. Our cities make waste, our agriculture and our animals make waste, our industry makes waste streams that we flare. Humans make waste. And if you don't understand what I mean by humans make waste, you're not thinking like my 4-year-old. So waste is everywhere. And one of the worst things about waste is that as organic material decomposes, it generates this nasty molecule called methane. And methane is a super pollutant. Essentially, one methane molecule does up to 84 times the damage compared to a CO2 molecule. CO2 gets all the publicity, but methane's the real villain. So overall, methane accounts for at least 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So methane is the enemy, and the enemy must be destroyed, right? That's what we do with a flare. We burn it off, and we mostly create CO2. There's always some fugitive emissions, and we convert it into a more benign sort of pollutant. But I think we can do better. Does the enemy perhaps have a good side? Methane is also the main component of natural gas, the same substance that we use to heat our homes and power our industry. And if we use biogenic methane from waste, this can actually be done in a carbon-negative way, reducing emissions. And this is how evil Dr. Methane becomes Mr. Biogas. How exactly does that work? Methane can become a carbon-negative superfuel. So if we take waste and we let it decompose, generating methane molecules, each methane molecule, as I mentioned, is up to 84 times as bad as a CO2 molecule. It does 84 times the damage. If, however, you're able to collect that methane molecule and use it, burn it for power, burn it for heat, use that heat to do some power, you only generate one CO2 molecule, so you still come out ahead. So methane can become a carbon-negative superfuel. That's great. Let's do more of that. Why don't we do more of that? Well, it turns out that all these methane sources are distributed. Each dot on this map represents a landfill in the United States that's flaring. And as you can see, waste is everywhere. More importantly, these sources are small. Each one of those is maybe 5 to 50 tons per day equivalent production. By our industrial measures, this is small. It is also difficult to get to market. Waste is low energy density. If we try to move biogas, if we try to move methane molecules, we need a pipeline. A pipeline is, by nature, a large investment, very capital intensive, and it doesn't go everywhere. If we try to move the biomass itself, the waste itself, then you need many, many truckloads. So that's the first challenge. If we essentially combine the fact that methane generates waste, a super pollutant, and the fact that this waste is very difficult to aggregate, that's how we get to this 15% part of the global emissions. But if only we could aggregate it, then it would become a carbon-negative superfuel. Where would we use something like this? Where would we use this superfuel? Where could it do the most good? Well, let's talk about another big challenge that humanity faces. Hard-to-abate sectors. Sectors like shipping, aviation, trucks. Sectors that simply cannot electrify to decarbonize and meet their requirements to decarbonize by 2050. You cannot electrify container ships. These sectors absolutely need a green, high-energy density, liquid fuel that is easy to transport, cost-effective, but also reliably available everywhere. Well, that gives me an idea. The key here is liquid. What if we could convert these methane emissions on site to a liquid? So we take the gas from our landfills, the gas from our industrial flares, the wasted biomass, the methane from our wasted biomass on our farms, and we have these chemical plants in a box that are right-sized for these applications, so about 8 tons per day, 300 MCFD of gas, and make this liquid on site, a liquid that can be put in a truck and taken to market, where it can be used to decarbonize shipping, aviation, trucks, or further processed into other chemicals. This system would be on site, it would be modular, so you can move it because the sources change. It would be deployed quickly. You're not building a large chemical plant. Using local resources, but most importantly, it has to be cost competitive. So this is our call to action. Humanity needs to develop technology that enables right-sized, cost-effective modular plants. Today, our whole philosophy of chemical manufacturing is against that. We're used to building huge plants that rely on capital-intensive one-off equipment. And if you try to aggregate biogenic resource, if you try to aggregate methane, by the time it gets to the plant gate, the cost of transportation ends up completely destroying the economics. For green products, a large plant has more than 25 years of payback. What we need is a modular system that doesn't require thousands of tons of generation per day, but really works around this 5 to 50 tons per day, something that is CapEx light, modular, potentially reusing off-the-shelf components that can be placed next to the low-cost feedstock, somebody's waste. And we should be targeting something like less than 7 years of payback so that the market adopts it. How do we do this? Well, we change our thinking. We're used to building these big plants because we know how to reduce costs by using economies of scale. Another way we can reduce costs is leveraging economies of mass production. If we, instead of building field projects where everything is a one-off design, we build these systems in a manufacturing facility where the design is standardized, the parts are off the shelf, we can really get to these sort of payback periods. And if we manage to do this, the prize is huge. About 60% of US methane emissions are actually recoverable. We can convert them using this type of technology to something like 27 million tons per year of green fuel. This would power 5 to 10% of our aviation fuel requirements globally, or more than 10% of our shipping fuel requirements globally, generating more than $27 billion of revenue. This would be waste from our farms and our animals, our cities and our landfills, our industrial flaring. All of that can be recoverable. What about the remaining 40%? Well, let's just say that that is lost in the wind. So imagine if we extrapolate this concept to the entire world and use these resources. What could we do? And let's stop wasting our waste. Thank you.